and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. We want to start by congratulating Bonnie Yates, who is officially a grandma. So she's not going to be with us here today because grandmas have other things to do. I don't know very much information other than the fact that there is a new baby boy in the world and that he is loved. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So we're very excited for everybody and saying many congratulations to the family because, you know, my mother always used to say, babies bring their own welcome, right? And there's nothing better than having a new baby to sit underneath. So we hope that Bonnie's getting many opportunities to just sit with her new grandbaby. I'm sure she will have stories. There was a picture of her in the delivery room. I don't know if she was there for the whole thing, and the quote I believe was no words, right? So there you go. I can't imagine. I always say I hope I live long enough to see grandbabies. Not in a rush. My son is 16, but I hope I live to see grandbabies because I hear that is a really particularly fabulous place to be in. So anyway, I'm Shannon Penrod. By the way, we are coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Monday morning. We've got a very interesting show for you today. As I said, we don't have Bonnie Yates, but I'll tell you in a few minutes who we do have, and you know, anything could happen. Let's just say that anything can and will when our guest that's with us will be with us. But we're going to be with you for the next hour talking about autism. We want for you to participate in any way that works for you, but we've got a lot of suggestions for you. In fact, Traven is going to show you some of the different ways that we find easy for you to connect with us. While he's showing those to you, I want to remind you our homepage. It's autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to do. There is a pop-up that will come up now that says, hey, do you want to subscribe? I want you to know that if you fill that out, first of all, the pop-up stops, right? But second of all, what happens as a result of that, we don't spam you. What we do is we send you a viewer guide at the start of every week that says, here's who's going to be on this week's show, so that it clues you into sort of what's happening. And then occasionally, and I do mean so occasionally, we will notify you when we have a special guest and it's last minute, or if there's, you know, some sort of thing going on that we really feel that you would find value in it. Usually, I mean, the times that we have pulled the trigger on that, sending you guys a message in the middle of the week and using our subscribers, it's only ever been when we have Temple Grandin on at a very short moment's notice. So that's really what that's about. I don't like to be bugged with a lot of emails. So I don't like to bug you with a lot of email, but please subscribe. It's free, and then you get the viewer guide, which is just it's a picture, and you go, oh, that's who's on the show this week. I want to tune in and see that, right? Okay, and but you can also chat with us on the live feature. It's on the bottom of the page now. It says chat. Click on that and it opens up a box where you can type things. It does have a word or an icon limit, a character limit. If you find that that's just too small for you and that you really have a lot that you want to say, please always feel free to drop me a line at s.penrod@autism-live.com, and that's how you can reach me. Okay, we're thrilled that you guys are here, and I got a lot that I want to cover, but first I want to remind you that on this show we have a lot of experts. I'm not one of them. I am in your corner, because you're part of my community. And when I say my community, I'm talking about the larger autism community. That's the individuals who are on the spectrum, the people who love them, and the people who are trying to help them, right? Because I think there's a lot of things we're not going to agree on. Let's just get that out the way. A lot of things we're not going to agree on, but the one thing that I think we all agree on is that individuals who are on the autism spectrum have the rights to the same dignity that anybody else has. Come on. I shouldn't even have to say that, but we do have to say that. And that sometimes they need supports to be able to gain access to the things that other people can do without the support. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have a responsibility to provide that support. And it's individual specific. It is not one size fits all, right? So that's what we all agree on. And in any case, I'm thrilled to be here and work as a cheerleader. We want to provide inspiration and information. I want to be a switchboard operator, one of those old-time switchboard operators. So, it's like I visualize this in my head that you call in and say, hey, I'm in New Jersey and I need to know, what can I do to help my child who's 17 and doesn't have any place to go after school and I need him to make friends. Think, we plug you in. And I tell you about social skills services led by Dr. Jed Baker in New Jersey, right? I just want to plug you in so that you find the thing that works for you. So feel free to write into us on any of the platforms that we have and let us know what your thoughts, feelings, questions, and concerns are, right? Okay, on Mondays, we like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about? What does it have to do with me? And the whole point of this is to save you time and money, because the experts use these terms sometimes because they want to be precise and other times because they want to be efficient, right? And we want them to be precise and we want them to be efficient. We just want to understand what they're talking about. So first we give you an actual definition. We take one term at a time and we give you an actual definition. When appropriate, we make fun of it because that's how we roll. And then we give you the working definition and we try to make sense of that as well. So here we go. Today we have a term, we've done it before, but it's not one that we have in heavy rotation, and I feel like we maybe should, apraxia, because this is very misunderstood. So let's take a look at what our actual definition for apraxia is. It's characterized by a loss of the ability to execute or carry out learned purposeful movements despite having the desire and the physical ability to perform the movements. Okay, that's like what? That sounds a little scary, right? Let's go on to our working definition for apraxia. A disorder in which someone is incapable of doing something even though they may want to. Now, what we see in the field of autism is a lot of individuals who have vocal apraxia. And so that is, it means that everything is functioning. Like we have kids that their tongue isn't strong and so they can't make noises and can't articulate, right? We have kids that are behind in terms of their facial muscles because they didn't develop speech when, the neurotypical kids did, so they're behind, right? We have kids who have a deviated septum, and so they're not breathing properly, and so it's hard for them to produce sound. There's all of those things, right? And then we have kids that just haven't learned how to speak. They can babble, right? But they don't say words, and they don't communicate words, right? And then there are kids who have apraxia, that they can hear and understand the words that are being said, and they want to say it, and their lips work and their tongue works, but there is some disconnect between their brain and getting the sound out. And that phenomenon is called apraxia. It is, I think, one of the most frustrating things for parents that there is, but there are lots of therapeutic things that can be done. I've seen some kids make tremendous progress with apraxia, but it's parents that are like, this is it, and we're going all in, and we're going to work on this. There's a certain amount of frustration. You will see people, and the word is there and they're wanting to get it out and they just can't. And sometimes they will show distress, and because it's like, I can't get that word out. That breaks my heart. And just as a parent watching somebody else's child go through that, oof, right? So to the parents out there that are dealing with apraxia and continue to work on it with their kids, I just want to say, man, you're my heroes, because I see the progress that your kids are making, and you're really creating a pathway for other parents to be bold and following your footsteps, and that's a really important thing, and that there is progress that's being made in this arena. It's tough, it's hard fought, it's hard won. These kids are working really, really hard, and so are the parents, and so are their teams. But they are making progress. So absolutely kudos to all those parents. And hopefully soon, I hope to get, looking for an apraxia expert to come in and talk with us so that we can know more about that. Okay, so moving on, that's our jargon for the day. What's our question of the day, Traven? This is, we ask you guys, and you can answer for us on Facebook or on YouTube, or you can write into me. What do you wish you were good at? Of all the things in life, what do you wish that you were good at? Boy, and as I ask myself that question, I wish that I was, on just a very simple level, I wish I was better, my focus was better. That's something I can really work on, right? Is getting because I'm good at having the energy to start something, but then so being able to finish something and stay focused on something through completion, not my forte. So I wish I were better at that. I wish I was a better dancer. And I've taken dance classes. The connection, some people have such a strong connection between their brain and their body, and they move their body, and they can move their body exactly the way that they want to. That connection for me is like long distance and crackly. So I know how I want my body to move, but it has never, since I was a child, it just takes longer for the message to get there. I have a friend, a dear friend, who was a dancer and a brilliant dancer. And as he aged, he was telling me, he said, oh, it's so frustrating because I can feel the delay now that I tell my body, I want it to do this, and there's a delay. And he said that, I wonder if that's what it's like for the rest of you. And I said, yes, that's what it's like. But he was very frustrated by it because it was something that he loved. And then his body wasn't cooperating. But I wish that I had that connection. I think that people who are good with their bodies and have that connection between their brains, that must be a wonderful thing. Those are athletes and dancers and people like that. I'm 2 left feet, right? And the connection is not good. But there's other things. I can talk you under the table. So that's got to be good for something. I don't know what. Anyway, we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this week is one of my favorite. It's my theme song, right? And I do mean that literally, accentuate the positive. For those of you who have been to see my one-woman show, I actually sing. I'm giving away secrets here. I actually sing this in my one-woman show because I sort of feel like every life has a soundtrack to it, right? And it's sometimes the things that you say to yourself. Sometimes it's the song that you hum. How many of you have ever gotten what do they call it, a worm in your head where you are hearing a song over and over and over again and you can't get rid of it, and it starts to grate on your nerves? Well, I sometimes will deliberately put a song in my head to help me to get through something that's hard. To help fill the space in my brain so that it's talking to me in a positive way to get through things. And Accentuate the Positive was one of those songs that helped me when we were going through ABA intervention. That, what's wrong is always available, right? But if you focus on accentuating the positive, then you find the positive. It's that positive assumptive question that I'm always talking about ask your brain, how could this be better? And it will always tell you how it can be better. So accentuate the positive. And I believe in that. I don't mean that you blow rainbows, right? And tell lies, because I think it's important to talk about the stuff that's really, really hard, but then accentuate the positive, always. That's sort of my personal take on things. So we're going to talk this week about how can we accentuate the positive, and that when you're down in the dumps and when things aren't going well, when it seems like everything is difficult, it's always a spreadsheet of, all right, what do we have in our plus column? All right, this happened and we're not denying that, but what do we have in our plus column? I was on the phone the other day talking with a dear friend of mine, the first friend of mine that ever had a child who was on the autism spectrum. And she's a hero of mine. And she's somebody who's been through a lot in her life. No one would say that this woman has had an easy life at all. And her second son ended up being diagnosed on the autism spectrum at a time and a place when she did not have access to what I had access to. And still, she created opportunities for her son. And I was telling her that I had been talking about her in a talk that I was doing with parents, because I said, here's what I quote you all the time. Is that after my child was diagnosed with autism, there was one day that was particularly bad. I was at the grocery store and my son was having a hard time, and so I was having a hard time, and there was a woman with two seemingly, I mean, what do I know, but seemingly able-bodied teenagers. I suspect something had happened, like maybe her husband had died, but she was clearly looking at me and angry at me that I could not get my child to do what she thought my child should do. And it was one of those situations where you go down an aisle and you're like reaching for the peaches or whatever, and you're in somebody's way and they're and my child's freaking out, and she just was like rolling her eyes. And then you move off to another thing and you go, I really don't need this person's energy in my life, right? But then you go around the corner to the next aisle and you're sort of on the same track with this person, so you just keep meeting up with them on every aisle. Even if you go to aisle 3 over to get away from them, then you run into each other at the checkout. Right? And this woman was just letting me know with every eye roll and every sigh that I was, a pain in her rear, and that my son was not what he should be. And it just beat me down that day. Just beat me right down to the mat. And I got in the car and I was crying, and I thought, I'm going to call this friend of mine. And she gave me a pep talk that I will never forget. And she said, nobody said this was easy. You thought this was going to be easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy. But she was like, you stand up and you put your shoulders back, girl, and you walk through that grocery store with pride, because you are a mom of a young man that's working a totally different path than anybody understands. And she was like, you stand tall in the pride and put the shoulders back. That's what I always think whenever it's like, over the years, I mean, now I have no excuse, but there was a time that I did, right? And I would always think, put the shoulders back. And, you are doing something that everybody doesn't get the opportunity to do. You are showing up for your kid. You are making it happen. And that's called accentuating the positive. And on the same day that I was talking to this mom whose kid still has a tremendous amount of challenges that face him on a daily basis, right? And so we were talking to her, and I was saying, boy, that thing you told me about putting the shoulders back. But then the same day I was having a conversation with somebody whose kid got challenges, maybe not even as many challenges as her kid. And the whole thing is, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? And boy, we've all been on that page too. I'm not saying that everybody doesn't have a right to visit that page, but if you wanted to live your whole life on that page, you can. I'm just here to tell you that there's another page, and it isn't about how well your child is doing. It's about your ability to look at the glass and see sometimes that half full is amazing, is absolutely amazing, and there are good things to it if you're accentuating the positive. So, like I said, what's wrong is always available. You can always go there, and that's a bad day. but if you accentuate the positive, whew, right? Okay, so today on the show, we are going to accentuate the positive. We have an amazing guest. Alex Plank is joining us. Alex is the founder of wrongplanet.net. If you haven't visited wrongplanet.net, congratulations, today's your lucky day. Look at that beautiful picture of Alex. Alex is somebody that I consider to be a friend. And Alex and I have a very interesting relationship because Alex will call me out. I'm sure he will sometime in the next half hour. And he'll tell me when my thinking is not helpful and useful to an individual who's on the autism spectrum. And you know what? I value that. If I sat here and thought that I had it all figured out, I think we would all know that that would be a lie, right? So Alex helps to educate me. And then there are times when Alex asks me questions. And one of the things that we agreed that we were going to talk about today is what happens when you're on the spectrum and people tell you that you're being annoying and you're just being yourself. I don't know that we're going to arrive at any answers, but I hope that we'll be able to shed some light on what that may feel like. And I'm interested in hearing his thoughts and feelings about that. So don't go anywhere because it's definitely going to be interesting. Stick with us. We'll be back with Alex Plank.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Hi everyone, welcome to Camp Ed 2019. And we are so excited because this is our first camp where we're in our new home. We have an incredible ballroom dance class going right now, so let's come and take a look.
Camp Ed at the Ed Asner Family Center is an inclusive arts camp featuring some of your favorite arts programs. We have a little over 3 weeks of camp left. We want you to come and join the excitement.
Hi, I'm Nava Pasquitz-Asner, the co-founder of the Ed Asner Family Center and the founder of Camp Ed. And I'd like to introduce you to Andrew Pascal, who is my new camp director for 2019.
We have a very action-packed last 3 weeks of camp. Next week we have Art Week, where we're going to do a color run. We're going to get really colorful. We're going to tie-dye some clothes. The week after that, we're doing Heroes Week, where we're going to talk about heroes as well as fictional superheroes. Our last week is Surf Week and Celebration Week. And Nava, can you tell us a little bit about Surf Week?
Yes, definitely. This is my favorite day of the entire summer. We're going to be working with the amazing surf therapists of A Walk on Water, and they're just going to give us a great day, beach, fun, just a really wonderful, safe day. Please come join us at Camp Ed 2019.
Yeah!
Woohoo!
To join us for a week or the next 3 weeks, call us at 818-302-0712. Once again, that's 818-302-0712. Camp Ed and the Ed Asner Family Center were created by our family for your family.
Well, I'll be hornswoggled.
Welcome back. I love that little piece of video that the Ed Asner Family Center has put together. But right now, and Alex, we're welcoming Alex Plank, but then I got to say, Alex, I love this black and white picture we're showing of you.
Thank you.
Is that a new headshot?
No,
Oh, I love it.
it's not a headshot. It's not of my head.
See, I told you, Alex would call me out on everything. Alex,
Well, I mean,
well, but you know that they call them headshots. Actors like headshots.
well, no,
and
they
sometimes
call like a headshot, like which is either like mostly your head or your head and
So
upper body.
what do you
Now, they
call
don't-
that?
You can see your like a photo, like an editorial photo.
What does your agent call that?
Well, agent doesn't use that photo because it's not something that an agent would really use for actor.
All right.
actor.
Well, I think it's beautiful all the same. So thrilled to have you here. I mentioned before the break that you are the founder of wrongplanet.net, and I was telling people that they should go there to check it out if they haven't already. But you are an amazing advocate in this community, and you are a working actor. We just saw you this last season on The Good Doctor in a wonderful role that people are still talking about. And you also have worked as a consultant on films and TV shows, helping people to accurately portray individuals who are on the autism spectrum. But you do a lot of things too. You're a filmmaker too. Is there anything you can't do, Alex?
Is that, what do you mean?
I was being a smart aleck. I was saying you're so good at so many things. And so I was just being a smart aleck saying, is there anything you're not good at? But you're good at most things.
I don't think so.
I think you're good at a lot of things. And you're very funny, which is always a fun thing. So Alex, you and I were talking the other day, and one of the things that came up in a conversation was about what it's like for individuals on the spectrum. Because sometimes a friend or a person will tell you that something that you're doing that you consider to be a part of you is annoying or off-putting. And I thought it would be a really good thing for us to have a conversation about what that feels like and perhaps decoding it, because that's got to be confusing.
Right. I would say that in general, a lot of times I worry that I'm annoying people and I don't know. So that was more of what I was actually talking about in that situation.
And what do you think, what makes you think that people are finding you annoying?
Well, I used to be annoying. So now
when were you annoying?
I think probably when I was a kid, I can imagine.
What were you doing that was so annoying?
I wouldn't know if someone wasn't interested in what I was talking about or things of that nature.
And so then what happened as a result of that? Did people say to you, you're really annoying, or was it just hard to make friends?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people would say that, but I think it was just more of like I realized that I was being annoying to the point where it was hard to make friends.
Okay. And then what changed?
I would say I just learned gradually more skills for making friends, and so that's changed.
And you have a lot of friends now. And you have a lot of friends, but you also you do.
Yeah, I know a lot of people and that are friends and stuff. So
and you seem to me to have a pretty big social life.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I enjoy hanging out with others and doing things. So
yeah. And wherever I see you, I'll be someplace and you walk in the room and people go, Alex, Alex.
Well, yeah, lots of people are fans of mine, I guess. So I think it's just more of sort of a residual thing from back when I was a kid and didn't know how to do stuff. So it's sort of stressful.
Yeah.
And, that can give me a lot of social anxiety, etc.
And how do you deal with that when that comes up?
Just try not to think about it.
Because, here's the thing that I think a lot of people, where people on my side mess up, or maybe just where I mess up, is that I hear you talk about that and I want to understand where you're coming from, but there's a big part of me that goes, but I feel that way too. But I'm sure that it's on a different level.
Well, I mean, obviously we all have different feelings. I don't know what you feel. Maybe you have way more anxiety than I do. I mean, who knows?
I know I'm worried that people find me annoying. I worry, I'll be standing and talking with a group of people and we'll be having a good time and I walk away and the thought occurs to me, oh my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a natural thing that a lot of people think, but I was more referring to sort of not being able to let go and having, sort of circular thinking, after something like that.
And is that the only thing that you have circular thinking on, Alex? Or
no, I mean, lots of different things can be stressful.
Yeah.
I would say, it can be really hard.
Well, one of the things that I really admire about you, Alex, and there are many things that I admire about you, is that you've always been really open and that you've been solution oriented and that you created wrongplanet.net so that people have an opportunity to talk about things like this.
Right, and as an actor, I also like to try to portray characters in a way that's, very, that can help others who might be seeing it. I mean, it's not just about, having fun with the character and making a show. It's about, the fact that people haven't seen people like themselves on TV until recently.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point. So you played a character on The Good Doctor that had some anxieties about things that are different than what Alex's anxieties are about.
Right.
And, you're a very talented actor, so obviously that's something that you can do, but I think you're particularly good at being able to do that in a way that's very truthful. When you were creating the character, what's your process? Were you thinking about people who have that kind of anxiety, or were you taking the anxiety that you have and morphing it to fit what the character's anxieties were? What's your process?
Well, I don't really see everyone's process is different. So at least for me, it's just sort of getting in the mind of the character and playing it. I don't have like a sort of what's the word? Set of things that I do. It really depends, and it's sort of going with the flow and sort of feeling it out, and it just sort of is an intuitive thing. I think as someone who's on the spectrum, I've spent a lot of my life having to learn social skills and sort of fit in and stuff just to make friends, and sometimes acting like different from what I would normally act just because it's not always natural for me. So I think that gives me, at least in my opinion, a edge in terms of getting to the character, being able to act.
I think
it really is something that I don't really think is something that I've really necessarily done much of a formal study. I mean, I've taken acting classes before, but I really think that the best stuff is stuff that comes from deep within.
So there's a lot of people who are watching Alex who are parents of individuals on the spectrum, and our biggest thing always is that we wish we knew what our kids were thinking, and we wish we knew what they were thinking so that we could better serve them, so that we could not do things that make them more anxious and help them to deal with their anxieties and help them to be able to do the things that are important to them. What are some things that you notice that, in speaking for yourself, that parents do that isn't helpful that we could stop doing?
I mean, it really depends on the parent. A lot of parents seem to be a little too protective and do everything with their kids because they're on the spectrum, and they think that that's somehow like helping them be, but it's definitely not helping them be independent, that's for sure.
It's so hard. I mean, like I think that I'm one of those parents, that I'm very overprotective. And
well, how old is your son?
16. And
right, but I was more talking about
adults.
Once they get older. Obviously, even then, though, it's still, I mean, it still applies to teenagers, I would say, even.
Okay, so it's so I'm allowed to be a little overprotective then, maybe.
No, I just mean.
I was asking for permission, Alex. So,
well, I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your kid. I mean, obviously within reason.
But there are times that I have said to my child over the years, well, Alex says this, and I think you're someone he looks up to. So he's like, oh, well, if Alex says that. Because I did, way back when he was starting junior high school, make him watch the video that you did about how to respond to a bully. That was so meaningful for him. And I think probably the best thing that he has used to help him with real world solutions for what to do when someone is being inappropriate with him. You want to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that video and how that came to
Well,
be?
you know, I think that was probably the video you're referring to is the one I did with the UCLA Peer Center, where we did a few different scenarios of social skills training, but we did live demonstrations
Yeah.
of sort of showing what would happen in a social situation, a mock social interaction, as it were. We also did one with asking someone out on a date, and another one with joining a social circle, and then also dealing with bullying as the one you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved the one on flirting. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
really, I
So,
wish you would
yeah,
do
that's-
more
I
of
think
those,
that-
Alex.
Oh, I would love to. You know, I might go over there and do those.
Yeah. If you need help, we're happy to partner with you on that, because
Okay.
they were lovely, and I refer people to those all the time. They were really, really fabulous. Why did you want to do a video? Why did you choose those subjects to do video on?
Well, I think those are subjects that everyone deals with, and I think it's something that people find important. So that's why I did those.
So people are asking, where can they find those videos? Where on Wrong Planet do they need to go look?
Well, just you could type Autism Talk TV Alex Plank into Google and probably find all of the Autism Talk TV videos, which is what those were a part of. There's other videos too that are not necessarily social skills videos, but interviews and other things.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty good.
I think you've interviewed John Elder Robeson probably as much as
Many
anybody
times,
else
yeah.
has. And
Well, I used to live with him, so we went off-roading a Joshua Tree in a rental car.
which is fascinating. Somebody needs to give you a network TV show doing that kind of thing, Alex. That would be super.
Sure,
fun.
why not? I would love
Right?
that. That would
Right?
be great. Everyone will watch that.
I know.
Let's do
Well,
that.
honestly, I think people would.
Well, yeah. Well, of course.
To have two amazing brains like yours conversing with each other. You both have very interesting senses of humor.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So what, you've done The Good Doctor, and, you're an actor, you're auditioning on a regular basis. And I'm sure that there are lots of different things like the Talk TV. Is there anything in particular right now that you've got in the works that you're spending your time on? Or are you sort
There
of
are lots of things. I really, there's no point in really talking about anything until it's, actually made. But, I'm working on a lot of different projects that are in the works. So
yeah,
that's kind of exciting.
well, you're always busy on different things. People may not realize, but you were the consultant on The Bridge, the show The Bridge.
Yeah, that's the poster back there
Oh, is that what that poster is?
for season 2, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I wondered. So, when you are a consultant on a film or a TV show, what kinds of things are you able to help them catch and take care of? Give us an example.
Well, it really depends. Ideally, a lot of the shows that would have involved people like me on the spectrum would be made by people like me on the spectrum. So, in that case, I would be, helping to write and doing, a lot more. But as just a consultant, that I would be hired to help the producers and actors and writers and directors make the character authentic and have situations that were true to life, but also compelling and not just boring.
Yeah, not boring.
Or just a stereotype, which can be,
What do you think is the most offensive thing to you when you see someone playing somebody on the spectrum? What's the basic thing that they get wrong that drives you bonkers?
Well, I don't think it's about getting one thing wrong. I think it's just about the fact of the matter is that, there are a lot of really good actors on the spectrum that could be playing parts, and it's a shame to see those actors not getting roles when they could be playing the few roles that do exist, like go to a neurotypical. But that to me is more of an issue than any sort of getting it wrong, because anyone can watch, it's acting. So
yeah,
a lot of people say, well, why can't if an autistic person can't play if a neurotypical can't play an autistic character, isn't that what acting is? And I'm like, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is that there's also autistic actors that are not getting the neurotypical parts or the autistic parts, or any part, and they're really good. And also, just living that life experience helps you with a role, you know. So like, it does seem better, I think, if it's a truly well done job. And,
I'm a big
but I also think that you know, the idea that I also hear people saying, well, you know, if then autistic people can't play neurotypical roles. And I'm like, well, how many roles are there of characters that are they say neurotypical in the breakdown of the character? None. An autistic, the roles are not neurotypical roles. They're like roles that anyone really could play that, you know, fits the character.
Well, for me,
neurotypical or not, or someone in a wheelchair, etc. You know, it's just that there are all these roles out there that are specifically for us that even those we're not getting. So we're not getting really a lot. I mean, I you know, doing The Good Doctor I thought was great, and you know, there's a lot of other shows that are trying to cast characters, but I think it's still not where it could be, and that's where I feel like you know, the casting really needs to step it up, and I think, you know, casting directors are starting to do that. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. For me, it's a question of access. That, you know, I hope that soon, and there's certainly a lot of press around this, and I think it's getting better. That if we made sure that individuals with different issues, whether it was, you know, somebody who's in a wheelchair, actors.
Well, I also wouldn't call that an issue. I would call that just a part of, you know, who they are. And actually, being in a wheelchair is not really an issue. It's just like a way that helps them walk, you know.
Well, and I was going to say of different abilities, but I'm trying to cover everything.
It's not different abilities. I'm specifically talking about like disabled people. I mean, obviously, everyone has different abilities, but I'm talking about trying to get disabled people more chances, right? So yeah, whether it be people who use wheelchairs or people who are deaf. There's a TV show on Sundance that's called This Close that has 2 deaf main characters, you know, so that we're starting to see even the creators of these shows being disabled, and that's being celebrated as something that's cool, you know, so I like that.
Yes, I do too, but and forgive me because I was trying to get to a way. My mother was born clubfoot, and she hated the term disabled. So it's
well, that's probably because she felt like there's something wrong with being disabled, which is sort of a prejudice. You know what I mean?
Yes, I mean that was just her particular thing. So that is always a word that I have a hard time with, because I think that some people
you think there's something wrong with being disabled. I mean, it's just a description of what it is. It's if you need to use a euphemism like differently able to describe something, that's inherently saying something's wrong.
But her point, and I've met people on the spectrum who also take this stand, that her point was, if you say that I'm disabled, it means I'm not able to do, and she said, and I am. I'm just gonna go about it a different way. So she hated being called disabled or handicapped. She just hated it, and that's how I was raised. So it's hard for me.
Well, that's not what the word means. Obviously, disabled doesn't mean, you know, that you can't do things. It means that you have there's certain abilities that, you know.
But I also believe that you know, in languaging it the way the person, and that was my mother's thing. So, and I had many years of her telling me how she felt about it. It's not how everybody else feels about it, but that's why I always stumble.
Right, but when was your mother born?
She was born in 1937.
Right. So I mean, that's also a time where, you know, you know, people used lots of terms that were sort of, you know, problematic, you know, and that she lived during a time where, you know, where black people weren't allowed to go to the same school as white people. So I don't think that it's a good idea to base anything, you know, in terms of sort of, you know, a human rights issue in terms of the language on someone, you know, that's coming from a mentality that was, you know, very prejudiced in so many different ways.
But my point is that was her point of view. And I never want to say to a person, when you're languaging, talking about yourself, you're using the wrong language. I'm like that. I can't do that, even if they come from a different time in which.
Right, but I mean, is your mother watching this?
My mother is no longer with us, but
Right, so why is that even relevant?
because
to,
I'm
to
telling
what
you, it's
say?
like ingrained in she's still talking in the back of my head. So I sometimes struggle to know which words people would like to use to describe them. But by the way, Alex, I know people who are on the autism spectrum that were born in the last 20 years who very adamantly say to me, I am not disabled, don't say that about me.
Right, because it's, that's obviously there's still prejudice against the thing. And, it's a shame that people grow up in a world where that seems shameful to them.
Oh, I don't think they're saying it's shameful. They're saying it doesn't apply to me. And I've met people who are on the autism spectrum who, they're saying, I'm perfectly able. I do things in a different way than you, but I'm perfectly able. Don't put me in that category. I don't qualify for disability. I am not disabled.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing for someone in a wheelchair. They do things differently. They're rolling around instead of walking, but that doesn't mean that they're disabled. They just need to have surfaces that they can roll over.
Right.
So I mean, that's sort of
that's what I'm saying. People have different words for different things. But my point is
but
access.
the word. Okay, so if someone's not disabled, then they don't have autism because autism is a disability. I mean, that's literally what it is.
Well, there's autism spectrum disorder, but do you not know, you know more people on the autism spectrum than I do. Are there not people that you know that don't qualify for a disorder?
Well, then they aren't on the autism spectrum. I mean,
well, they don't have a diagnosis of or they don't qualify for a diagnosis of ASD, but does that mean they don't have autism?
Yes, that's literally what it is. I mean, autism is a definable thing. We have a diagnostic criteria. And
all right,
I mean, if someone wants to say that they're on the autism spectrum, but they don't qualify for a diagnosis, that's just wrong. I mean, you can say whatever.
So let me ask you this then. For kids that are diagnosed with with ASD, and they fit the criteria, and the criteria says, that you have to have substantial difficulties in your life, that you have some of these symptoms and you have substantial, it prevents you from being able to live your life without supports, right? I'm really condensing down what the DSM-5 says.
Is that actually what it says?
It says, it lists criteria and it puts on it, and it says you have to have some of these.
Right, and everyone fits those criteria. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I make up for any sort of deficits that I have in other ways. I would say I'm quite successful in my life, but that doesn't mean I don't have disabilities in other areas that it doesn't really matter. For instance, if you have I have issues with executive functioning, but so I might have to pay late fees on something because I forgot about it, but I can afford those late fees, right? Whereas maybe someone else couldn't. So that but I still fit that criteria because
right. Yeah. But there has been this growing phenomenon with kids who get a tremendous amount of therapy that they then get to a certain point where they no longer meet the criteria of the ASD diagnosis. Then what?
I don't think that I've heard of anyone being cured of autism.
I'm not talking about a cure. I'm not talking about a cure.
If they don't have,
you met the criteria, and now you don't meet the criteria.
I think perhaps there's never been any studies confirming that. I mean, you could say that, but I mean, if you want to back that up.
Study confirmed that. There's been studies for 30 years now. There's hundreds of them.
I mean, if I can still meet the criteria as an adult, I don't see how, a lot of times I hear parents say, oh yeah, he doesn't meet the criteria anymore, and I meet the kid, and I'm like, well, that's not true at all. That's just...
Well, but the criteria says that, there are things on an autism spectrum diagnosis that I fit, except that I don't because there's things I perseverate on. There's things that I have, repetitive and restrictive behaviors, because I have a diagnosis of OCD, but I don't qualify for an autism spectrum diagnosis because the things that I qualify for on the diagnosis, they aren't preventing me from leading my life without support.
Well, so when was the last time you were, and where were you assessed for this? I mean, what organization would a medical professional assess you in that way?
a psychologist, a licensed psychologist. But
Right. So I mean, the issue is that there's varying degrees of people, you know,
so in your
diagnosed.
mind, nobody ever gets to the point where they no longer qualify for that diagnosis.
Well, I mean, I was assessed using the ADOS. I don't know what assessment tools the psychologist gave you, or if she just talked to you and said that to you. That's a big difference from actually getting formally assessed. So, did you actually take a test?
I wasn't being tested for autism. I'm just saying that.
There you go. I mean, you can't say that you don't meet the criteria unless you actually took a test.
Well, I mean, I could pay the money to go in, but I can tell you, I'm not going to meet the criteria. I know because in the DSM-5, it says you have to have these things, and they have to be at a severity that it prevents
right,
you
but you're sort of talking from like as an armchair position, saying, oh yeah, well I've read this DSM, and yet there's actually a formal assessment tool that is regarded as the gold standard for an autism diagnosis. Unless you actually went and did that test, you really can't. I mean, I feel like you're making claims that are just not. I don't think.
Okay. So let's take it away from me for a second. Let's go to there's a child who goes and gets an ADOS test, and the ADOS test says they qualify for an autism spectrum diagnosis. Okay, that happens, probably 22,000 times a day in the United States. Now the child goes and has intensive therapies, and the child goes back 6 years later, different doctor. Still the same test, the ADOS test, and the doctor says this individual, and they don't know their background, but they look at the criteria, same criteria, and they say this child does not qualify for an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. So did they never have it in your mind, or is that just not possible?
I mean, we're talking in theoretical.
But it's not. This happens every day. This actually happens every day. I mean, we have people on the show all the time that have had this happen. Sometimes now, Alex, there are doctors who, it's offensive to me, but there are doctors who are coding these kids as being autism in remission. That's an actual code in our medical world now, autism in remission. And I'm just wondering from your point of view, knowing as many people as you do on the spectrum, and because words matter, so for you, this phenomenon doesn't
exist. It just sounds like wishful thinking where they've learned skills to deal with the issues that they have, but it just, that's the kind of thing that it doesn't seem.
Possible? It doesn't seem what?
It doesn't seem very relevant. I mean, to me, I just don't understand how, a parent could really be in denial enough where they say their kid is not on the spectrum anymore just because, they've done some training to pass a test.
Well, this is where, this is where I'm saying, what do you feel about it? Because for me, in my head, there's autism. And this is me, this is not somebody else creating this, but in my head, meeting the people that I have met, there's autism, which is an operating system that, it's just like the difference between Mac and PC. One isn't wrong, it's just a different operating system. And autism is a different operating system. And sometimes when you put autism, that different operating system, into a world full of computers that react in a different way, there's miscommunications, right? Until we can find the pathway. But if this computer that has autism, I'm making it computers, but we know that people aren't computers. But if this computer finds the way to be compatible with all those others, they still are operating under this system, but they don't have the roadblocks.
I mean, I also don't understand that analogy, because can you name a modern operating system that doesn't have, any that wouldn't be able to communicate with another computer? I mean, everything uses HTTP and all these standards for communicating. The operating system is sort of irrelevant.
But my husband has a Mac computer, and I have a PC. And
Okay.
and we have a portable hard drive. And when we stick it into his, it says it's not formatted for a Mac. And if I tell it to format it for the Mac, I can't get at the stuff from my PC. So we have different.
What's because a Mac, because that's a file system. So there's like, as long as the Mac has the drivers required in the kernel to read a file system, it should be able to read that file system. I mean, yeah, maybe
it has to be formatted. So I have to go through
it doesn't
all
have to
these
be
steps
formatted.
for
You
them
just
to
need
be able to talk.
It needs to be readable. I just don't think that's a very good analogy. I
All
think,
right, let's leave that analogy behind though. But for me,
I mean, you could also just, take, an hour to install Windows on the computer, and then you can read whatever file system that's on
right,
the Windows
it's a
computer. The same
workaround.
computer.
It's a workaround
Not a
that makes it
workaround,
work. Well, it makes it compatible. That there are ways to make the computers compatible so that they can talk.
But we're not computers.
Exactly. And that's we said let's leave that analogy behind. But for me, autism is like I don't believe that people ever, if you have a brain that works the way that autism works, that's never going to change. But I do believe that autism is ultimately, in its purest form, is not a disability. That's what I believe, based on what I have seen.
I think you just don't understand what a disability is, if that's the case, because a disability is there's a social model of disability, which basically is, well, yeah, someone's disabled because most of society is designed in a certain way to do a certain way of thinking. So yeah, obviously, like if we were in a society that was only autistic people, then actually the disability would be not being autistic, right? But that's just not the way the world's designed.
And isn't
right?
that why you call it Wrong Planet?
Well, kind of. I mean, it's more sort of tongue in cheek, but I think, but yeah, sort of, yeah, that's sort of where it comes from. But my point is that for instance, if you have, trouble, if you're a wheelchair user and you live in a world full of no ramps and no elevators, you're incredibly disabled, right?
Yes.
You live in a world where where there's ramps everywhere, you're not disabled at all.
But if and they're creating more of these all the time. They're creating capabilities for people who are in a wheelchair, either surgeries where they give them back motion, or mechanics that whether it's artificial limbs, or they have those things now that where somebody who's in a wheelchair can stand up and walk, because it's sort of like a machine, like those space age kind of things. I don't know if you've seen them, but I've seen them.
Right, but my point is that you're saying that disability is a bad word, which is just contributing to the stigma.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad word. I'm just saying, is it accurate for autism? Is it accurate? Now, I know many people who are on the autism spectrum who require supports. And there's nothing to be stigmatized about that. There's nothing wrong with that. And they require supports. And I work hard every day to be able to find the supports to give to those people.
I've met a lot of these folks that say that they're, that where their parents say that they're in remission. And generally they're, more obviously autistic than even I am. So I find that hard to believe that, that's a thing. Obviously we can be successful. The disability is a part of who we are. It's just getting society to give us, the tools we need to be successful. I mean, it's maybe some people are able to sort of compensate in other ways and still be successful. But I think that in general, just making society a more inclusive place is just better.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a very personal question, and you can say, I don't want to answer this. But do you, Alex Plank, think of yourself as being disabled?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, if I weren't disabled, I wouldn't really be able to say I'm autistic. I don't believe in this sort of autism supremacy argument that, oh yeah, well, we're actually an evolution of society. That's in another way more prejudice, just in the opposite direction, right? So I think it's just people need to talk about disability without feeling like there's something inherently wrong with it. Like maybe, I mean, you can use whatever term you want, but if you need to start using euphemisms, that's because it makes it sound like there's something wrong. You think there's something inherently wrong with that thing, because you're saying that disability. I think the understanding of a disability is sort of not understood entirely.
Well, and that may
Right?
be, and it may be because of my upbringing that,
Well, yeah.
I don't
I mean,
think
it's
there's
like,
anything...
people sort of, even the term, handicap is just sort of shows like why people, see someone who can't walk as, standing there in the corner, with a hand in their cap, a cap in their hand.
I want to be clear, just to be clear, that I don't think there's anything wrong with the term being disabled, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being disabled at all. And I don't think there should be any stigma attached to that. It's just that I would not refer to I do not think of myself as being disabled. And so if somebody said to me, "You're disabled," I would be like, that is just not how I identify myself, right? And that's the only thing that I know, and so I'm always trying to understand it from other people's points of view, and I think this has been very elucidating for me to hear you talk about it, because I can't know it from your side without...
But I mean, you said you had OCD. So
yeah, but I don't consider that a disability.
But you were saying earlier that it was a disability, that
it's a disorder.
It gave you anxiety, that made it hard for you to deal with something after something happened.
There have been times in my life where it was disabling. It is not right now, knock on wood, that it won't be again. But
that's the thing. It's you're saying knock on wood as if like, there is something wrong, or it's like you would rather not.
I just didn't like how my life didn't function when I was in the OCD. I didn't care for it.
Okay.
So I'm saying I would like to not feel that way again. That isn't going to be the case with other forms of disability. But for me, when my life didn't function, it really didn't function. I couldn't leave my house. And there are things that I want to do. I couldn't do the show if I was in my OCD. So I don't...
But it sounds like you still, the OCD that you're just getting, I mean, what has changed that makes it so you can leave your house now?
I got cognitive behavioral therapy, and I learned how to use my brain to talk to myself about my anxiety.
So you're basically, well, that cognitive behavioral therapy is your wheelchair in a way, I mean, you're saying... I mean, that's like saying that someone in a wheelchair isn't disabled because they have the wheelchair now. So, like, I mean, you're basically saying...
So in your mind, you would think of me as being disabled?
Well, I mean, you're using aren't you using a tool to be able to...
But the tool is my thoughts.
Well, the tool is whatever the tool is required to,
So in your mind...
do what
friend
you need
to friend, based on what I've told you, you think of me as being disabled.
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself, like, I mean, are you using a adaptive skill or something to...
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go. I mean, how big of a difference is there between that and having...
This is I promised an interesting conversation, and I think we've had...
A wheelchair, right? So, like, I'm just saying, I mean, you can consider yourself however you want. I'm just saying, like, you are... It's not like you got, took away the OCD. You learned a coping mechanism to deal with it.
Right.
People who don't have OCD don't need to use CBT to, when they have thoughts like that. So you sort of...
It's very interesting. I promised people that we would talk.
Disability don't, without a mobility disability, you don't need crutches or a wheelchair. So, I mean, you can sort of say that you're not disabled anymore, but I mean, that's the same thing about someone in a wheelchair. But yet, I'm sure most people would look at someone in a wheelchair and call that a disability still, right?
Like I said,
because it's
I
not
promised...
like the disability you can't live your life. It just you require assistive devices or things to do things that other people might not need that.
Right.
It's like
I promised no answers when I said that you were going to be on. I said we were going to talk about stuff and that I promised it would be interesting, but that maybe we wouldn't get to any answers. And unfortunately, we're out of time, Alex. So I don't.
Well, thank you for having me.
But I love always and respect always hearing your perspective on things. It's always elucidating. Always. You always make me think, and I appreciate it.
But I mean, it's not just my perspective. That's really what a disability is. I mean, that's the definition.
Well, and it's your definition from somebody who is self-identifying as being someone with a disability.
I mean, it's if you have you read the Wikipedia article on disability? Because then that would like basically say all the things I said.
Well, I don't necessarily always think of Wikipedia as being the total authority on everything.
But something like that.
I mean, I certainly will go and look it up to see. I'm more focused on the DSM-5. Those are the things that I look at and read, and obviously reading what I don't think if I went to the doctor right now, I don't think I would qualify for OCD. It's just that when I was having problems and was diagnosed with that, I don't think I would any longer. I don't think that somebody would diagnose me with that, but I might be wrong, and I shouldn't just guess.
I think I think that if you were diagnosed with OCD, that's that you were diagnosed with OCD and you learned how to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. In any case, we got to go. Alex, I so appreciate you. Where can people go to find out more about you?
AlexPlank.com and WrongPlanet.net, and you can follow me on Twitter @AlexPlank or Instagram @AlexPlank. Please do so. I would like more followers, so @AlexPlank. P-L-A-N-K. A-L-E-X-P-L-A-N-K.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Wonderful Alex Plank, founder of WrongPlanet.net. We've gone a little bit over, but it was worth it. And we are back tomorrow with a best of. And I hope that you guys will tune in then. And don't forget, on Wednesday, we have Dr. Doreen Grampuchet coming back with us. On Thursday, our autism expert is Carolyn Chris. And on Friday, you're not going to want to miss this, we have Julie Kornack, that is going to be talking about policies and that all-important the Mental Health Parity Act that sometimes is making the difference of whether families get services or not when they have been denied by their insurance company. And also Mark Fleming from Puzzle Fit, a PR company that specializes in individuals who are on the spectrum and differently abled folks. So tune in for all of that. That's happening on Friday. Until then, give yourselves a hug from me and stay with us all this week. Bye-bye.